Hey, welcome everybody.
I'm Roxane Webster.
And I'm Keith Alba.
And we are the owners and partners of My Home Team at Keller Williams.
That's right.
What is this?
This is the Honest Hour.
Yay!
That's right. That's where we come on here and talk like our perception, our spin, our no spin.
Our no spin.
Right. On what we're seeing in the real estate industry in Denver metro area.
Yeah.
And stuff.
Yeah. And we always forget to say this at the beginning, so this time we are not. We're exercising extraordinary focus and prowess and reminding you to hit the subscribe button.
Please.
And the little notification bell so that you can be irritated at 3 in the morning when we are dropping our latest...
dropping wisdom.
Dropping droplets of wisdom.
Right.
And then share it with everybody, because the algorithms, the algorithm gods love that, and we'd like this information to spread out.
If you're getting any value about that, please help us out. Share it, right? And don't be selfish.
So we are getting a lot of questions from buyers that if we are representing them as buyers agents, how do we get paid?
Yeah, after this post-NAR settlement, things are a little bit uncertain. Just happened, right? All the practice changes must have been implemented by the 17th. A lot of the MLSs went earlier than that, but the last one I heard was on the 15th, but as of the 17th, it's all across the board, across the nation, that these settlement terms had to be implemented and go from there.
And I think for clarity, I think it really helps to think of how it is we used to get paid. How it is that we used to get paid is that somebody would list a house, a realtor would list a house for sale, and their seller would agree with them. It was always negotiable that they would pay the listing agent whatever they were going to pay them, and then they would offer to pay the buyer's agent on behalf of the buyer, right? And they would advertise
out of that total amount, right? So there's a total amount that was agreed to, and from that, if the seller and the listing broker were agreeable to it, then they would take a portion and pay the agent that was representing the buyer.
That's right, and they'd advertise it in the MLS. The biggest change is they cannot advertise that anymore, but the practice has
They can't advertise it in the MLS.
In the MLS.
Right, so it can be advertised elsewhere, sign writers, flyers, all of that kind of stuff. It can be elsewhere, it just can't be in the MLS.
It can't be in the MLS. So in a practical terms, not much has changed. Right? And in fact, Colorado, we love our contracts here. Thank you, Keith Alba, who helped to update them. Right there in the contract to buy and sell real estate, it says now there's a whole provision that says exactly how that buyer agent is being paid. Right. It says one of three things. Either the seller is going to pay X% or this much flat rate, or the listing agent is going to pay X% or this flat rate, or the buyer is going to pay X% this flat rate, or any version or any combination of the three. So before you even write an offer on a contract as a buyer, you know exactly how much your realtor is getting paid and where that's coming from.
I think even prior to that, yes, it is disclosed in the contract. I agree with you completely, but now you are going to see agents that, based off of the MLS participation agreement, are now saying, hey, I need to get into a written agreement with you, buyer, prior to even showing you any properties. And in those documents, one of two, that number is going to be addressed. Right? The buyer and the buyer's agent are going to say, this is what my time is worth. And if you're agreeable to that buyer, sign off on this agreement, and then we can go and seek it, possibly from the seller, possibly from a listing brokerage firm, but ultimately, you're going to be the backstop buyer because, you know, as agents, we deserve to get compensated for our time and energy. It is really a limited license to practice law is what we do in Colorado here. And so what attorney can you find that's going to say, yeah, no, well, give pro bono all the time, there's nothing that needs to be done. So
that's right.
It's a little different, but ultimately it's still much the same.
The end result is largely the same, right? And the thing that I like to keep in mind is that the seller who bought that property, when they bought that property, their agent was compensated by the seller or the seller's agent. Yeah, so they bought it that way, most likely. For them to turn around and say, well, I want to have had the benefit of somebody else paying this compensation on the front end, but I don't want to offer it on the back end. If you've got a good agent who knows how to negotiate, not being too self-promoting, negotiate and play the ukulele and update contract forms, that's just a matter of negotiating that on your behalf. If that's what's important to you, we'll make that a negotiation.
Yeah, they don't get to eat, the sellers don't get to eat their cake get their cake and eat it too,
That's right.
Because I have had conversations with appraisers that are out there, and they're going to be getting that information when they're doing the appraisal. Like, okay, we're going to use these 4 or 5 comparable sales. Was there a commission paid by the seller to the buyer's agent? And if yes, net value of that sold property is up here, and then seller's coming in and says, I want that, but I also don't want to pay that, that's not going to work in the appraiser's eyes. If that
They say that house
sold,
is worth less money because they're not paying it.
right, it's not a true comparable. There was costs that were absorbed by the seller when for those comparables, when they sold those comparable properties, and there will be an adjustment down in value for properties that are not offering to pay a co-op. So if seller wants that number that his neighbor got, then that seller's going to have to match what the that seller paid to the buyer's agent that represented the buyer on that.
Or sell it for less, right?
Yeah.
We had one last week where that I was negotiating where we made an offer of $800,000 on the property with my compensation being covered by the seller. And they came back and said, well, we'll pay the 800, we'll take the 800,000, but we're not going to pay the compensation. And I was able to pull out, well, hey, this one that we are basing this offer on did pay that compensation. So you don't have to pay my compensation, but if that's the case, then the price is going to be
reduced by the compensation
amount, and that's exactly it.
Yeah.
So you can have it any way you want, but you don't have it in a way that doesn't pay me.
Yeah, well, or, the property's not going to appraise for that.
That's right.
To that, that comparable sale. So
That's right.
It's going to take a little bit of time, I think, for lots of agents to kind of understand that, to be able to have have the dialogues with the consumers, whether it's on the buy side or the sell side, to say this is what it looks like in this environment. But ultimately, there's going to be an adjustment one way or another.
Gee, Keith, Alba, do you think this might be time to have a skilled realtor in your corner?
Yeah. I think ultimately it's going to be that there's a lot more dialogues that are going to be happening about what the value that agent is bringing to the transaction. What do they know? What can they do for you? Have they been in the business for decades?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
How good is their negotiations? How's their knowledge? How's their contract knowledge? All of that stuff is now going to be more important. And as a buyer, you should be asking those questions, right? Make sure you're comfortable in saying, yes, you agent are going to be worth that amount. If I have to pay a portion of it or all of it, I'm good with that, so long as we get it compensated somewhere else.
That's right.
It's probably going to be asking price.
That's right. Excellent. Thank you.
Let us know the questions you have. Drop them below. Happy to answer those.
Subscribe button,
yeah,
notification, share it, blah, blah, blah.
See you next time.